Stop right there. Before you order your next sandwich, there's something you should know. Because what you think is just beef on bread is actually two completely different food transformations happening behind the scenes. Two meats, same deli, same glass counter. But what happens before they get there? Totally different story. One is soaked, cured, and quietly changed over time. The other is rubbed with spices, smoked for hours, and built for bold flavor impact. They don't just taste different, they become different. And once you know how deep that difference goes, you'll never look at a deli menu the same way again. Welcome to Ordinary Things, Deep History, where we explore the hidden stories behind the simplest things in everyday life. To really understand the difference, we have to go back to a time when food didn't come from refrigerators or freezers. There was no easy way to store meat for days or weeks. If you didn't preserve it properly, it spoiled. So people had to get creative. In countries like Ireland and England, one of the simplest and most effective solutions was salt. They would cover beef in large grains of salt, known as corns of salt, which pulled moisture out of the meat and slowed down bacteria. This method didn't just preserve the meat, it gave it a distinct taste. And that's how corned beef was born. At first, it was purely practical. But over time, people began adding spices to the brine, things like peppercorns, bay leaves, mustard seeds, and garlic. That started as survival slowly turned into flavor. Meanwhile, in another part of Europe, a different idea was taking shape. In Romania, people developed a method called pastrama. Instead of just preserving meat, they focused on enhancing it. The meat was cured like corned beef, but then it was seasoned heavily and often smoked. This extra effort didn't just make the meat last longer, it made it taste richer, deeper, and more complex. So even from the beginning, the philosophy was different. Corned beef was about simplicity. Pastrami was about transformation. In the late 1800s, these traditions traveled across the ocean. Immigrants brought their recipes with them to cities like New York, where cultures mixed and food evolved. Ingredients changed, techniques adapted, tastes shifted. And over time, pastrami and corned beef became two of the most iconic meats you could find in a deli. Often displayed side by side, often confused, but never truly the same. Now let's look closer at where everything starts, the cut of meat. Corned beef is most commonly made from brisket, a cut from the lower chest of the cow. This area gets a lot of movement, which makes the meat tough. But when you cook it slowly, something amazing happens. The tough fibers break down, and the meat becomes incredibly tender. That's why corned beef feels so soft and easy to pull apart. Pastrami can also be made from brisket, but traditionally, it often uses the navel cut, from the belly area of the cow. This cut contains more fat woven throughout the meat, and fat plays a huge role in flavor. It melts during cooking, creating a richer, juicier, more indulgent bite. So right from the start, pastrami has a natural advantage when it comes to bold flavor. Then comes curing, the stage where both meats still look very similar. They're placed into a brine made of water, salt, and spices. This process can take several days. During that time, the meat slowly absorbs the flavors while being preserved. At this point, if you looked at corned beef and pastrami side by side, you probably wouldn't notice much difference. But what happens next changes everything. Corned beef stays simple. After curing, it's ready to be cooked. No heavy seasoning, no extra layers. Its identity comes from that brine, giving it a mild, salty, slightly spiced flavor. Pastrami, on the other hand, takes a bold turn. After curing, it gets coated in a thick spice rub. This usually includes crushed black pepper, coriander seeds, garlic, and other seasonings. This coating forms a crust on the outside of the meat, and that crust is powerful. It adds texture, aroma, and a strong, peppery kick. Already, pastrami is becoming something very different, but the biggest transformation happens during cooking. Corned beef is usually boiled or slowly simmered in water. This gentle cooking method makes it incredibly tender and juicy. It also helps reduce the saltiness, creating a balanced, comforting taste. That's why corned beef is often served with simple sides like cabbage and potatoes. It's not trying to be flashy, it's meant to be warm, filling, and familiar. Pastrami goes through a much more complex process. After being cured and seasoned, it's smoked at a low temperature. This step adds a deep, rich, smoky flavor that penetrates the meat. It also enhances that spice crust, making every bite more intense. But even after smoking, the process isn't finished. Pastrami is then steamed. This final step softens the meat while keeping all those bold flavors intact. So while corned beef is cured and boiled, pastrami is cured, seasoned, smoked, and then steamed. Each extra step builds more flavor, and you can feel that difference immediately when you eat them. Corned beef is soft, juicy, and mild. It has a clean, salty taste with gentle hints of spice. It's comforting, familiar, easy to enjoy. Pastrami is something else entirely. It has a firmer bite, a textured crust, and a bold mix of smoky, spicy, and savory flavors. It's louder, richer, more intense. If corned beef is quiet and classic, pastrami demands attention. Even in sandwiches, their personalities stand out. Corned beef is often paired with ingredients that support its mild flavor. You'll find it in traditional meals or in sandwiches like the Reuben, combined with sauerkraut, Swiss cheese, and rye bread. Everything works together to build flavor. Pastrami doesn't need much help. Stack it on rye bread with a bit of mustard, and it already stands on its own. That's why it's often the star of the sandwich. So when it comes down to it, what should you choose? It depends on what you're craving. If you want something simple, tender, and comforting, corned beef is the way to go. If you're in the mood for something bold, smoky, and full of flavor, pastrami is hard to beat. Interestingly, pastrami often starts with a process very similar to corned beef. That's why some people think of it as an upgraded version. But that doesn't make it better. It just makes it different. And that's what makes this comparison so fascinating. Two meats that begin in almost the same way, but end up with completely different identities. So next time you're standing at a deli counter, trying to decide between pastrami and corned beef, you won't just see two similar options. You'll see two different histories, two different techniques, two completely different flavor experiences. And no matter which one you choose, you're tasting a story that's been evolving for centuries. This is Ordinary Things, Deep History, where even the simplest choices have a deeper story behind them. And honestly, there's no wrong choice.